I was halfway through my steak when my 8-year-old niece pointed at my wrist and said, "Mom says you only wear that watch to impress real rich people." She said it casually, in the same innocent tone she used earlier when asking for more fries. But that line, that one hit like a punch wrapped in pink glitter. My fork paused midair. The table went quiet for a second before everyone broke out laughing. My brother, his wife, even my parents. Like it was the funniest joke ever. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because I was used to this game by now. It always started with a little jab, dressed up like a joke. And every time, I let it slide. Until now. My name's Jason. I'm 35, single, and, at least according to most of my family, a bit of a mystery. I keep to myself, show up to family events when invited, and I'm not big on posting every little thing I do on social media. It's not that I'm secretive. I just don't see the point in broadcasting my life to people who only want updates so they can compare it to their own. Growing up, I was the quiet one. My younger brother, Ryan, was the golden child. Charming, outgoing, always had a story to tell. People gravitated toward him. Teachers loved him, girls loved him, my parents. They practically orbit him. I, on the other hand, was the good kid. I didn't talk back, didn't ask for much, got good grades, kept my room clean. But I guess being easy to raise means people forget you're there. After college, I moved out of state and started my own tech consulting business. It wasn't flashy, and I never tried to explain what I did to my family, because their eyes would glaze over 5 seconds in. They just assumed I worked with computers and probably made okay money. I never corrected them. Meanwhile, Ryan bounced from one job to the next, always with some excuse: bad manager, unfair hours, toxic environment. He finally landed a job at a mid-level accounting firm and married a woman named Ashley, who could turn passive aggression into an Olympic sport. They had a kid 2 years later, Emma. I genuinely adore her. She's sweet, smart, and doesn't yet understand the layers of tension in our family. The lunch where she dropped that line about my watch was supposed to be a belated birthday celebration for me. Ryan picked the place, some trendy gastropub he liked to brag about, even though I footed the bill more often than not. I showed up wearing a navy blue button-up, jeans, and yes, a Rolex. A real one. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I liked how it felt on my wrist. I bought it for myself after landing a major client last year. It was a reward, a milestone. But to my family, it was showing off. I didn't say anything when Emma repeated her mom's words. I didn't flinch, just smiled and said, "That's an interesting thing to say," and asked if she wanted dessert. Later that night, Ryan texted me. Just a simple, "Hey bro, rent's due tomorrow. Can you help me out again?" He and Ashley had been between places for nearly a year now, staying in the old guest house behind my late aunt's place. A property I owned outright, though they acted like it was some family heirloom they were entitled to. I had agreed to let them stay there temporarily after Ryan lost his last job. But temporary turned into permanent, and helping out with rent turned into covering utilities, internet, and maintenance. Every month came with a new excuse, a new story. I used to believe him. Now I just watched. I didn't reply to his text right away. Instead, I looked at the document I had finalized that morning, something I'd been quietly working on for months. The timing, I realized, was perfect. I typed back, "Not after what I filed today." He didn't respond. Maybe he didn't understand. Maybe he thought I was bluffing. Either way, I went to bed that night knowing everything was about to change. But let me back up a little. Because you can't understand what I did, what I had to do, without knowing how far things had gone. See, this lunch wasn't the first time they took jabs at me. It was just the first time they let the kid do it. And when a child repeats something like that, it means it's been said often enough at home to feel like truth. That's what stuck with me. That Ashley had mocked me behind my back, in front of her daughter. That Ryan probably laughed along. That my own parents found it amusing. And that somewhere along the line, they had all decided I was just the guy who'd always pick up the check. The guy with no family, no wife, no kids, so clearly no real responsibilities. The guy who'd always be there when they needed help, because that's what family does. They didn't know about the late nights, the stress, the contracts I lost sleep over, the years I lived lean just to keep the business afloat. They didn't know about the promotions I turned down to keep my company small and private, so I wouldn't have to answer to anyone. They didn't ask. They never asked. They only saw the surface: nice watch, decent car, generous habits. and decided I must have it easy. That I could afford to give, so they could afford to take. It wasn't just Ryan and Ashley either. My parents had started leaning on me too. Small things at first, covering dinner, helping with home repairs. Then it became, your dad needs a new prescription, can you spot us? Or, we're thinking of replacing the car soon. Maybe you can help out. I didn't mind helping. I love my parents. But every time I tried to talk about boundaries or expectations, they'd say I was being cold. Money isn't everything, Mom would say. Don't forget who raised you, Dad would add. And Ryan? He'd just joke. Hey man, you make more than all of us combined. You got this. He wasn't wrong. But that wasn't the point. The watch Emma pointed out at lunch wasn't even the most expensive thing I'd bought lately. I had started diversifying my investments, acquired 2 more properties, and quietly opened a holding company. I didn't share any of this with my family because I knew how it would go. The more they knew, the more they'd ask. The more I gave, the more they'd expect. And the minute I said no, I'd be labeled selfish, ungrateful, a snob who forgot his roots. So I stayed quiet. Let them believe whatever made them feel better. Until the day they stopped being subtle. A few weeks before that lunch, I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to. I'd swung by the guest house to drop off a repaired appliance. They had managed to break the washing machine, and I heard Ryan and Ashley talking through the open window. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was walking up the driveway when I heard Ashley say, he's not gonna evict us. He needs us here. We're like his only family. If we weren't here, he'd be completely alone. Ryan replied, yeah, and every time we hint about needing help, he jumps. Just guilt him a little. Works every time. They laughed. I stood there, holding the stupid washer part in my hands, like some delivery guy. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not even hurt, just confirmation. That all the things I'd suspected were true. That I was being used, plain and simple. Not out of desperation. Not out of love. Out of convenience. I set the washer part down gently by the porch and left without knocking. That was the moment something in me shifted. I stopped justifying their behavior. Stopped making excuses. And I started planning. Because if they were going to treat me like a walking ATM, they'd soon find out what happens when the bank closes. But even I didn't expect what came next. And this brings us back to that birthday lunch. To the laugh that lingered just a little too long. To the smirk on Ashley's face when Emma repeated her line. To the text from Ryan that night, expecting another handout. To the document I filed that morning. To the storm I'd quietly set in motion. They never saw it coming. 2 days after that birthday lunch, my mom called. Her voice was chipper in that way she gets when she's trying to hide something. Hey, sweetheart, she said, dragging out the word like she used to when I was 10, and she wanted me to take out the trash without asking why Ryan didn't have to. Did you get a chance to talk to your brother yet? About what? I asked, already knowing. Well, she paused, then dropped her voice like this was national security. Ashley said he texted you. They're a little tight this month, and you know how stressful things have been lately. The rent, groceries, Emma's therapy sessions. I closed my eyes. The therapy sessions. That was a new one. Ryan hadn't mentioned it. I hadn't been told anything about it before. She's in therapy? I asked, sitting forward. What happened? Oh, it's nothing serious, Mom said quickly. Ashley just said Emma's been a little anxious lately. Maybe overwhelmed. You know how kids are. It's just a precaution. But the sessions aren't covered by their plan, and they didn't want to burden you. She just mentioned it in passing. I didn't buy it. Not for a second. Ashley didn't do in passing. She was the queen of strategic vulnerability. A master of painting herself as the noble victim who never asked for help, while everyone around her scrambled to help anyway. I didn't respond right away. My mom took my silence as guilt. I know you've helped a lot, she added gently. And we're all grateful. But Jason, he's your brother. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. That phrase, he's your brother, was their trump card. They pulled it every time Ryan messed something up and I hesitated to fix it. What they really meant was, he's your brother, and you're the one who's supposed to have it together. So help him. I thought about explaining to her, again, that I wasn't a bottomless well. That generosity had its limits. That being family doesn't mean being taken for granted. Instead, I said, I'll think about it, and change the subject. I could feel it, though. The shift. The walls closing in. They were ramping up the pressure, and not just with words. The next weekend, I dropped by my parents' house for Sunday dinner, something I used to do every few weeks, mostly out of habit and some half-buried hope that things might feel normal again. That night, Ryan and Ashley were already there when I arrived. Ashley gave me her usual smile, a tight-lipped, insincere curve that didn't quite reach her eyes, and offered me a glass of wine. As I stepped into the kitchen, I noticed Emma sitting at the table with a coloring book. Her head was down, but I caught her glance up at me quickly before looking away. "Hey, kiddo," I said. She nodded, barely. That was odd. She usually ran up to me, asked me about my car, or told me what she learned in school that week. But now, she seemed nervous, like she was waiting for a scolding. I turned to Ashley. "She okay?" Ashley sighed. "We had a little incident at school. Nothing major." Ryan chimed in, voice casual. "Just some trouble with another kid. She's been sensitive lately." They exchanged a glance. That kind of glance you can spot a mile away if you've spent your life around people who hide things behind fake smiles and polite small talk. I wanted to push, but I didn't. Not yet. I just sat down at the table and tried to enjoy the lasagna my mom had spent the day making. It was good. It always was. But something about that dinner felt staged. The conversation kept circling back to money. My dad mentioned how expensive car repairs were getting. Ashley joked about how their palace of a guest house really needed new pipes. My mom talked about how lucky I was to have found my niche in the tech world, and how not everyone had that kind of financial freedom. And through it all, they kept glancing at me. Not directly, just enough to make sure I was absorbing every hint. It was subtle manipulation at its finest. A performance of humble neediness, carefully calculated to wear me down. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know I'd seen Ryan's Venmo history a week ago. Public, by the way, because he never bothered to change the settings, where he'd sent $300 to a friend for VIP concert tickets. Or that Ashley had posted on Facebook about their spontaneous weekend getaway to a spot 2 towns over. I'd quietly screenshot it all. That wasn't struggle. That was exploitation with a fresh manicure. The final straw that night came after dessert. We were clearing dishes, and I heard my mom say to Ryan, "You know, you should really ask Jason to co-sign on the new lease. With his credit, it'd go through no problem." I stopped, turned. "What lease?" They froze. Ryan tried to laugh it off. "Oh, it's nothing set in stone yet. Just looking at options." Ashley stepped in. "We found this really great place near Emma's school. It's perfect. Quiet neighborhood, close to work, just a little out of budget. But it's only temporary, just until things stabilize." "Whose lease is it?" I asked flatly. "Technically, it would be in our name," Ryan said. "We just figured, with your help, we could get approved faster." "And by help," I said, "you mean put my name on the line for a lease you can't afford?" My dad jumped in. "Jason, no one's trying to take advantage. It's just family helping family." There it was again. That phrase. A knife wrapped in warmth. I didn't say anything, just nodded slowly and said I needed to get going. I left my untouched wine glass on the counter and walked out. No hugs. No goodbye. The next morning, Ryan texted me again. "Let me know when you have time to chat about the lease. We can go over the numbers. We really believe this could be a fresh start." I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the next week reviewing contracts and speaking with my attorney. See, the guest house Ryan and Ashley were living in wasn't just a free crash pad. It was part of a trust I'd inherited when Aunt Marilyn passed away. A trust with specific conditions, one of which allowed me to evict tenants with 30 days' notice if the property was being neglected or misused. And after some inspection, I had ample documentation of both. They hadn't paid for a single repair in 10 months. The backyard was trashed. The fence was broken in 2 places. The utility bills, which I covered, had skyrocketed. They were treating it like a frat house with central heating. I had my lawyer prepare the notice quietly. No need to raise alarms just yet. Around this time, I got another call from Mom. This time, her tone was less sugary. "Jason, Ashley told me you've been distant lately. Is everything okay?" I considered lying, but something in me cracked. Why is it that every time Ryan needs something, I'm the first one everyone calls? There was a pause. He's going through a hard time. And I'm not. I interrupted. "Do you even know what's going on in my life right now?" She hesitated. "Well, you never say." "Exactly. Because every time I tried, I was either ignored or redirected. Any success I had was dismissed as luck. Any struggle was a sign I was being negative." My mom's voice softened. "We just want to keep the family close. Then stop expecting me to carry all of it." That's when she said something I'll never forget. You have no idea how lucky you are to be in a position to help. Most people would give anything to have what you have. And maybe that's true. But luck didn't work 80-hour weeks. Luck didn't skip holidays to meet deadlines. Luck didn't stay up nights panicking over payroll and tax filings. I did. After that call, I went quiet. Didn't text. Didn't visit. I needed space to think, to prepare, to act. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to explain or justify. I was just going to move. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. A week before the rent was due, Ryan sent another text. Hey man, we really need to finalize the cosign thing. Can you meet tomorrow? I waited a few hours. Then I sent my reply. Not after what I filed today. I knew he'd show up the next day. I could already see the panic setting in. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't have predicted, was who else would get involved. Because that night, someone else knocked on my door. And when I opened it, it wasn't Ryan. It was Emma, standing there with a manila envelope clutched in both hands and tears brimming in her eyes. And that's where everything began to unravel. It took me a full 3 seconds to process what I was looking at. Emma, 8 years old, brown curls slightly frizzier than usual, big hazel eyes welling up like she was holding back a storm. She wore a lavender hoodie that still had the tag string poking out near the collar, probably a recent bargain bin find. She was alone. No car idling behind her. No footsteps from the sidewalk. Just standing there on my porch as the sun dipped behind the trees. Emma, I asked, blinking. What are you doing here? Where's your mom? She didn't answer right away. Just held up the manila envelope like it weighed 100 pounds. I knelt in front of her. Did something happen? Did you walk here? She gave the smallest nod. They told me to come. That sentence hit me like a slap. They? She nodded again. They said, you'd understand. I took the envelope from her, still crouching. My hands were shaking now. She looked so small, so lost. I reached out and gently guided her inside. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you some water, okay? She sat on the couch like she didn't know what to do with her body. Legs too short to touch the floor, shoulders pulled in like she was trying to vanish into the fabric. I handed her a glass of water, then sat across from her and opened the envelope. Inside were 4 things. A printed lease application with my name already typed into the cosigner section. A handwritten note from Ashley that said, hope this saves time. We already gave your info to the realtor. Just need your signature. A crumpled receipt for a $2,500 deposit already paid. And worst of all, a typed letter, signed by both Ryan and Ashley, giving me verbal authorization to approve and provide additional financial documentation on their behalf, without further notice. I couldn't move. I stared at the pages like they were written in another language. They'd forged my involvement. They'd given my name to a landlord without my consent, and worse, sent their child to deliver it. Alone. My heart dropped to my stomach. I looked at Emma, her little hands still wrapped around the water glass. Emma, I said carefully, did your mom tell you what was in this envelope? She shook her head. She just said to give it to you and wait. Wait where? Here. She said you'd bring me back. Bring her back. Like she was a piece of mail. Or a package they didn't want to carry. I stood slowly, feeling the heat rise up my neck. I grabbed my phone and stepped into the hallway to make a call I should have made months ago. Ryan picked up on the second ring. Hey, you got the envelope? Quick, right? We figured it'd be easier that way. Realtor said he can move fast if we. You sent your daughter here. Alone. A pause. What? Emma walked to my house by herself. With legal documents you forged with my name. I didn't forge. Come on. It's not like that. We just typed it up. It's not binding until you sign it. You already paid the deposit. That's refundable. Don't make this a big thing, man. We're just trying to move forward. Emma's fine. It's not like we sent her into traffic. You used your kid as a courier for a fake contract. You're not even sorry. He scoffed. You're blowing this out of proportion. You've been dragging your feet, and we had to act. You said you'd think about helping. I said I'd think, not that I'd sign anything. Not that I'd bankroll your new fantasy condo. Fantasy? It's not even luxury. It's basic. You're living in a house I own. Rent-free. Yeah, which needs serious repairs. You think we're living it up here. You're living off me, Ryan. You have been. Silence. Then, quieter, more venomous. You've changed, man. You used to be generous. You used to care. No, I used to let myself get walked on. That's what I used to do. I'm bringing Emma back, I said. But you and I? We're going to have a very different kind of conversation soon. He hung up. I walked back to the living room, trying to mask the fury boiling in my chest. Hey, kiddo, I said, forcing calm into my voice. I'm going to drive you home, okay? She nodded and followed me out. The drive was silent. She hummed quietly to herself, probably to drown out the tension. I pulled up to the guest house, walked her to the door, and knocked. Ashley opened it like she'd just been napping, not a single hair out of place, phone in one hand, wine glass in the other. Oh, great, she chirped. Thanks, Jason. I handed her the envelope back. You're not getting my signature, I said. Her smile didn't budge. We figured you'd say that at first. Just sleep on it, okay? Emma, go inside and wash up. Emma disappeared down the hallway. Ashley turned back to me. You're blowing this out of proportion. You sent your daughter to do your dirty work. She's part of the family too. She's 8. She's fine. And there it was. The total lack of remorse. Like using her own child as emotional leverage was normal. You really don't see anything wrong with this, do you? Ashley shrugged. You're the one making it weird. That's when I knew. Not suspected. Not theorized. I knew they didn't just expect me to help. They believed it was my role. My duty. In their minds, I wasn't a person with my own boundaries. I was a service provider. A resource. The family ATM with a side of emotional support. And they weren't just ungrateful. They were entitled. Worse than that. They were using Emma to manipulate me. And Emma, poor Emma, she didn't know any better. She was growing up in a household where guilt was currency and manipulation was a second language. I went home and sat in my car for a long time. Didn't even turn off the engine. Just stared at the dashboard, remembering all the small moments I had brushed off over the years. Like the time Ryan said, "You don't need all that money, man. You don't even have kids." Or when Ashley told me I was wasting space in that downtown condo, and how a real family could put it to better use. Or how they always showed up with a problem, never a solution. It wasn't just the lease. It was the pattern. The way they framed every request as if it were my moral obligation. The way they expected me to smile through it. And worst of all, the way they weaponized Emma. That night, I didn't sleep. I reread the fake lease 5 times. Then I reviewed the eviction paperwork again. Added notes. Emailed my lawyer with an update and a screenshot of the forged letter. The next morning, I got a text from my dad. Can we talk soon? Your brother's upset. Says you're being hostile. 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 Like I'd thrown the first punch. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked a meeting with the trustee who managed the remainder of Aunt Marilyn's estate, just to confirm some language in the trust deed. Specifically, the clause about long-term misuse of property leading to full transfer of control to me. Turns out, the clause was stronger than I thought. Not only could I evict Ryan and Ashley, I could reclaim the house entirely, sell the land, and redistribute the assets as I saw fit. I hung up and just stared at my phone for a long time. They had no idea what was coming. But before I moved forward, I needed to be absolutely sure. I needed one final conversation. Not with Ryan. Not with Ashley. With Emma. Because despite everything, she was still innocent. Still caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. And I wasn't going to let them break her just to get to me. The next day, I picked her up from school. Ashley had listed me as an emergency contact years ago and never bothered to change it. We got ice cream. Sat on a bench at the park near my old high school. She swung her legs while she ate, not saying much at first. Then she looked up at me and asked, "Did I do something bad?" That broke me. "No, sweetheart. You didn't. You were very brave." She nodded. "Mom said you'd get mad." "I'm not mad at you," I said. "I promise." She looked at her cone. "I don't like giving people papers. It makes my tummy feel weird." I put an arm around her. "You never have to do that again." She leaned into my side. We sat in silence for a while. And that's when I decided. This wasn't just about eviction. It wasn't about money. It was about breaking a cycle. One forged signature at a time, they had turned a little girl into a pawn. And they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. So I stood up, walked Emma to my car, and started writing the final phase of my plan. Because they thought the worst thing I could do was say no. They were about to learn what happens when I say enough. You always think that when you finally set a boundary, people will respect you more. They don't. They call you distant, cold, selfish. They tell you you've changed, that you're not the same generous, dependable guy you used to be. And if you're not careful, you start to wonder if they're right. The days after I picked Emma up from school were some of the loneliest I've lived in years. I dropped her off at home, made sure she got inside safe, and didn't say a single word to Ashley. Just a tight smile and a nod. She didn't even look surprised. Just said, "Thanks," like I was the doorman at a hotel she hated staying in. Ryan wasn't home yet. Or maybe he was hiding. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I already had a text from my mom. "Why are you pulling Emma into this? She's just a child, Jason. Don't use her to make a point." That one made me sit down on the edge of my bed and just stare at the wall. I wasn't using her. They were. But of course, no one saw that. To them, I was the one disrupting the fragile family balance. I was the one starting drama. I was the one making things uncomfortable. Like comfort was ever something I'd been offered in this family. It felt like no matter what I did, I ended up the bad guy. The next morning, I didn't get out of bed. Not for hours. My phone kept buzzing, calls, texts, emails, but I let it all pile up. I didn't answer my assistant. Didn't respond to a client who wanted to finalize a deal. Didn't open the email from my lawyer. I just stared at the ceiling and wondered, what would happen if I just disappeared for a week? No one would call to check on me. They'd only call to ask where the money was. That week, I canceled every meeting on my calendar. Skipped dinner invites. Let the dishes stack up in the sink. Every time I stood in the shower, I just let the water run until it turned cold. And every night, I lay awake wondering when I became the designated lifeboat in someone else's sinking ship. The eviction paperwork sat unopened on my desk for days. Not because I was scared to send it, but because I kept asking myself why it even mattered anymore. What was I fighting for? Family. The same family that didn't invite me to Dad's birthday dinner the year before, because it was just a small thing, and you're always busy anyway. The same family that forgot my birthday until Facebook reminded them. The same family that only ever showed up when they needed something, and never when I did. Yeah, that family. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, toothbrush in hand, watching the foam drip down my chin, and I didn't recognize the guy staring back at me. Sunken eyes. Unshaven. Wrinkled t-shirt from the floor. This wasn't me. This was someone who'd let years of silent tolerance rot into bitterness. Someone who'd given so much of himself away that he didn't know what was left. And that's when it hit me. They never took anything I didn't give freely. No one held a gun to my head when I paid Ryan's rent. No one forced me to fix Mom's car or cover Dad's medications or buy Emma's birthday gifts when they forgot. I gave and gave and gave because I wanted to be good. Because I thought being good meant being available. Because I thought love looked like sacrifice. But love without respect isn't love. It's control. And that realization? That was the bottom. Not some big dramatic explosion. Not a screaming match or a door slammed in my face. Just a quiet moment in the mirror where I saw the truth. I wasn't a brother or a son to them anymore. I was a resource. A walking wallet with just enough guilt to stay compliant. I spent the rest of that day doing nothing productive. I made a grilled cheese. Ate it on the floor in front of the TV. Watched reruns of old detective shows, the kind my Aunt Marilyn used to love. And then I pulled out the photo box she left me. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside were dozens of old Polaroids. Me at age 7, helping her paint the fence at that very guest house. Ryan sitting in her lap as she read him The Wind in the Willows. Her dog Rufus, tail midwag in every shot. Receipts, handwritten letters, and a Christmas card where she wrote, in her neat, looping script, "To my favorite nephews. May you always look after each other the way I looked after you." I remember reading that card at her funeral and thinking, I will. But I was the only one who ever tried. I closed the box and finally walked into my office. Opened the legal envelope. Sat down. And started reading every word. Carefully. Intentionally. Because if I was going to walk away from this, really walk away, I needed to do it the right way. The smart way. The final way. That night, I made a list. Not of revenge. Not of punishments. But of boundaries. Clear, non-negotiable boundaries. No more financial assistance unless legally documented as a loan with repayment terms. No more property use without signed, time-limited agreements. No co-signing. No favors. No just this one time. No contact unless it's mutual, respectful, and not need-based. And most of all, no more guilt. I printed the list. Taped it to the inside of my medicine cabinet. The first thing I'd see every morning from now on. And the next day, I went back to work. Not just because I needed to, but because I wanted to. I replied to my assistant. Reconfirmed the deal. Booked a trip to Chicago to meet a potential partner I'd been dodging for months. And in between meetings, I drafted a letter to Ryan and Ashley. A formal, notarized notice of eviction. 30 days. No extensions. No negotiation. I didn't send it yet, because something told me I needed to wait just a little longer. And then, like fate knew I needed confirmation, it came. On a Thursday afternoon, I got a call from a woman named Claire. She introduced herself as the leasing manager for the Parkside Terrace property, the same one Ryan and Ashley had tried to trick me into co-signing. She sounded nervous. "Hi, Mr. Clark. I'm just calling to verify some details on the paperwork your family submitted. There's some inconsistency." "What kind of inconsistency?" I asked. "Well, the signatures don't match. And there's a discrepancy in your reported income. It lists you as the sole financial backer, but the pay stubs look doctored." My stomach turned cold. "They forged pay stubs too?" "I didn't say that," she replied quickly. "But let's just say the documents raised some red flags." I exhaled through my nose. "Thank you for calling. I appreciate your professionalism." She hesitated. "I'm sorry, Mr. Clark. I get the sense you weren't actually aware of this application." "I wasn't." Another pause. "In that case, if you'd like to provide a statement of non-involvement, we can ensure this isn't reported under your name." I agreed. Hung up. Sat in stunned silence for a minute. They didn't just cross the line. They set it on fire and danced in the ashes. That night, I emailed my lawyer everything. The fake lease. The forged documents. The phone call with the leasing office. I told her I was ready. And I was. Because this wasn't just an eviction anymore. This was liberation. I'd spent years slowly sinking under the weight of someone else's comfort. Of being a good son. Of keeping the peace. Of doing the right thing. But none of it was right. None of it was peace. And as much as it hurt, because believe me, it did hurt, I had finally reached the moment where the fear of being the villain paled in comparison to the pain of being their pawn. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The first thing I did was change the locks. Not on the guest house. Yet, but on everything else. My downtown condo. My office. My digital life. I updated every password, pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus, and placed a fraud alert just in case Ryan got any more creative. I didn't think he'd stoop lower than forging documents. But then again, I never thought he'd use his daughter as a delivery system either. I even went as far as hiring a cybersecurity consultant to do a sweep of my devices. She found a few apps on my old iPad, left at my parents' house during a family weekend last year, that had been remotely accessed and linked to Ashley's Google account. Whether that was malicious or just sloppy didn't matter. I wiped the device and tossed it into a drawer I didn't plan to open again anytime soon. I was done being watched, done being accessible. And with that decision came the first wave of relief I'd felt in months. Not joy, not triumph, just space, breathing room, the kind of psychological air you don't realize you've been suffocating without until it finally fills your lungs again. By the time Monday rolled around, I was already operating from a different place mentally. That morning, I put on my best Navy suit, not because I had to, but because I could. I'd spent so much time dressing down around family, trying to avoid comments like, "Oh, big shot today," or "Who are you trying to impress?" that I forgot how much I actually enjoyed looking sharp. I wasn't dressing to show off. I was dressing for me. And wouldn't you know it, I had a spring in my step the entire walk to my office. It was a new co-working space I'd moved into quietly 2 months before. Clean, modern, secure. My name wasn't on the directory, and I liked it that way. I kept it private on purpose. Not even my parents knew I'd moved out of the old shared office I used to rent. They still thought I worked out of the same dingy spot downtown, which worked perfectly in my favor. At 9:15 sharp, I had my quarterly strategy call with a Fortune 500 client we'd been slowly onboarding for months. And after ironing out the final legal points, I officially secured a multi-year contract that would pay out more in the first 6 months than Ryan and Ashley had made in the last 5 years combined. I sat back in my chair when it ended, staring at the digital signature confirmation on my screen. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't fist pump. I felt ready. That afternoon, I called Claire, the leasing agent from Parkside Terrace, and thanked her again for the heads up about the fake lease. I sent over the signed statement of non-involvement, then gently asked her to keep me informed of any further applications submitted with my information. She hesitated before hanging up. "I probably shouldn't say this," she said, "but your brother and his wife. They came by in person after I flagged the issue. caused a bit of a scene. I raised an eyebrow. Did they say anything about me? She laughed nervously. Let's just say they're not your biggest fans right now. Good. I wasn't applying for that position anymore. By midweek, the momentum had picked up. That client deal opened the door to 2 others, both smaller, but valuable for the long-term relationships they offered. I found myself looking forward to work again, not just as an escape, but as an extension of who I actually was. Not the quiet, dutiful older brother. Not the emotionally manipulated son. Just Jason Clark, founder and CEO of Clark Systems Advisory. For the first time in years, that title felt real. And the timing couldn't have been better. Because Thursday afternoon, I finally got the call from my attorney confirming that the eviction paperwork had been reviewed, notarized, and approved. We scheduled delivery for the following Monday. 30 days. No extensions. I told her to proceed. That weekend, I drove out to the lake. Alone. No parents. No birthday dinners. No niece with sad eyes asking if she did something wrong. Just me, a rental cabin, a stack of legal pads, and a bottle of red wine I'd been saving for a non-occasion. I watched the water for hours. Thought about Aunt Marilyn. She'd left me that house because I was the only one who ever helped her without asking for anything in return. Ryan only showed up when he needed money or a place to stay. Ashley didn't even come to the funeral. Said it conflicted with a wellness retreat. I thought about the Christmas card she'd written, about looking after each other, and I realized something. She didn't mean sacrifice. She meant boundaries, respect, mutual care. Looking after each other doesn't mean destroying yourself to protect someone who's burning the house down with you in it. It means drawing a line so nobody falls off the edge. When I got home Sunday night, I found an envelope on my doorstep. No return address, no stamp, just folded paper. Inside were 2 sheets. The first was a handwritten note from my mom. Jason, whatever's going on between you and Ryan, we can work through it. Don't let this tear our family apart. You know how he is. You've always been the stronger one. Please don't do anything drastic. We're all we have left. And the second? A printout of a GoFundMe page, created by Ashley, titled, Help Us Save Our Home. In the description, she claimed they were being illegally evicted by a family member over a misunderstanding, and that Emma's stability and safety were being threatened due to personal grudges and money games. My name wasn't mentioned outright, but I was definitely the family member. They had already raised $340 from friends and coworkers. My mouth went dry. They weren't just spinning the narrative. They were weaponizing it, turning their irresponsibility into a sob story and selling it for sympathy points. Leveraging Emma again to paint themselves as helpless. I sat down on the floor of my entryway, the GoFundMe still in my hand. I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't even feel surprised. Instead, I felt something settle in my chest like armor sliding into place. Cold, quiet, final. They wanted to play this publicly? Fine, let them. But they were about to find out that just because I'd been quiet didn't mean I wasn't powerful. That night, I contacted my lawyer again. She advised me not to engage with the GoFundMe or make any public statements, yet. But she did give me one important piece of advice. Start documenting everything, she said. Because if this escalates, and it will, you'll want the receipts ready. So I did. Every text, every forged signature, every utility bill I'd paid, every time Emma was used as a messenger. I created a folder called Family Fallout and filled it like I was prepping for court, which, to be honest, I kind of was. The following Monday, I had the eviction notice delivered via certified courier. I didn't go in person. I didn't call or text. I didn't even check the security camera footage. But I heard from Claire the next day. Apparently, Ryan showed up at her office again, yelled at the front desk receptionist, accused her of colluding with me, said I was trying to sabotage his family. Claire had to call building security. Later that evening, my dad called me for the first time in over 2 weeks. He sounded tired, older than I remembered. Son, are you sure this is the road you want to go down? I paused. Why do you ask? Because Ryan's hurting. Ashley's distraught. And Emma. My stomach twisted. Don't, I said quietly. Don't use her name like that. He went silent. Then, after a beat, you're not the only one who's suffering, Jason. I know, but you're the only one making it worse. And there it was. That same old tune. The idea that my reaction to the hurt was the real problem, not the hurt itself. I almost let it get to me. Almost. But instead, I said, Dad, you can believe what you want. but I'm done cleaning up his messes. And if that makes me the villain in your story, I'll live with it." Then I hung up, not out of anger, but out of choice, because I was done arguing, done explaining, done asking to be treated with respect. And as I leaned back in my chair, phone on the desk, inbox full of new opportunities, I realized this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. Because sometimes the rise doesn't come with applause or admiration. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the form of peace, power, and the refusal to be manipulated ever again. The day after the eviction notice landed on their doorstep, Ryan finally broke his silence. Not with a call, not with a text, with a voicemail. An old-school, 28-second voice memo sent to my email, which was strange enough to make me play it twice just to be sure I hadn't missed something. It started with fake calm. "Hey Jason, just wanted to clear the air. Look, I get that things have been tense. I get that you're upset. But there's no need to make this uglier than it already is. I know you're serious about the eviction, but you know how hard it is to find a new place this fast, especially with Emma involved. Let's just talk, family to family, before lawyers get too deep into it." Then he signed off with something that made my blood run cold. "You don't want to make this worse than it has to be, man." That tone, that quiet, veiled threat pretending to be concern. I didn't respond. I sent the voice memo to my lawyer. She replied 5 minutes later, forwarded to documentation. "Keep everything. Do not engage." I took her advice. But it wasn't easy. I had always been the fixer, the peacekeeper, the older brother who let things go. Now I was the ice wall they were crashing against. And the cracks were starting to show. The GoFundMe campaign hit $1,400 by the end of the week. Ashley posted vague Instagram stories every other day, filtered selfies with captions like, "Pray for us during this awful time." People are so cruel. Always with a sad face emoji, never with a name. She even changed her profile bio to full-time mom, part-time fighter. The guilt campaign was in full force. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I had been preparing for this kind of fallout long before the eviction notice ever went out. Because when you grow up in a family where love is conditional, where peace depends on your silence, you learn how to protect yourself early. You learn to keep receipts. Back in February, months before the forged lease debacle, I had begun reorganizing the ownership structure of every major asset I held. My LLC had quietly taken full control of the family trust property, thanks to a clause Maryland included that allowed me to reassign ownership for business continuity. The house they lived in technically now belonged to a corporate entity I controlled. The utilities had already been transitioned out of my name, scheduled to shut off the day after their eviction window closed. I hadn't told anyone, not my parents, not my assistant, not even my financial advisor, because you don't announce a checkmate before it's played. But just as I was starting to feel confident, comfortable, even, something unexpected happened, and it changed everything. It was a Thursday, mid-morning. I had just wrapped a video call with a logistics firm out of Austin when I got a message from a name I didn't recognize. Nina C. Tenant records office. The subject line, regarding Ryan Clark and Ashley Clark, property history request. I clicked immediately. Inside was a short message. "Hi, Mr. Clark. As per your open file with the property registry regarding potential tenant violations and asset misuse, I wanted to bring something to your attention. Attached is a scanned copy of a quitclaim deed filed 2 years ago that may be relevant to your case. It was filed under your aunt's former property. I thought you'd want to see it for yourself." I opened the attachment, and there it was. Ryan's signature, Ashley's too, on a form that claimed my aunt verbally agreed to hand the property over to them, in full, before her death. They'd filed it months after her funeral. No lawyer, no notary, no witnesses, just a quiet, shady attempt to muddy the title so that if I ever did try to sell the house, they could claim ownership confusion. It wouldn't have held up in court, not for a second, but it explained everything. Why they stayed so long, why they felt safe trashing the backyard, racking up the bills, ignoring notices. In their minds, they had already won. They thought they owned the house. My house. Marilyn's house. That's when the rage kicked in. Not loud, not explosive, just a slow, simmering wave of betrayal so deep it made my hands shake. They had tried to steal from me, from her, from the woman who raised us when our parents couldn't afford daycare, who made us grilled cheese sandwiches shaped like dinosaurs, who took us to the planetarium every summer. who gave us the only place in the world that ever felt safe. And Ryan had tried to erase her wishes with one forged form and a garbage legal maneuver. I picked up my phone, called Nina directly. Nina? It's Jason. How long have you had this on file? It popped up during your ownership reassignment paperwork, she said. Usually we flag quitclaim deeds that aren't notarized, but yours didn't conflict, so it didn't come up until we ran a title scan. Is it legally valid? Not even close. No signature confirmation, no date match, no witness. Honestly, it looks like a high school project. But it does show intent. That word stuck with me. Intent. I asked her to send me a certified copy. She overnighted it. And the moment it landed on my desk, I knew what I had to do. I sent the document to my lawyer with one note. Can we use this in court if they contest the eviction? She replied within the hour. Absolutely. This proves not just misuse, but premeditated fraud. If you want to press charges, we can escalate. At minimum, it strengthens our case beyond dispute. For a long time, I just stared at the screen. Press charges? Could I do that? Should I? It wasn't about punishment. It was about truth. About setting a boundary so loud they'd hear it every time they thought about me in the future. But first, I needed more. I needed leverage. Something public. And just like that, fate delivered again. My assistant, Maya, bless her detail-oriented soul, had been managing my company's public social media accounts for the past 6 months. She emailed me Friday afternoon with a screen grab. Subject line, saw this trending on Facebook. Figured you should know. It was a screenshot of a Facebook group post from Ashley. A long, dramatic paragraph detailing their eviction horror story from a cold, emotionally abusive family member who inherited a property he didn't need and refused to share it with his struggling brother and niece. It had over 200 comments, dozens of likes, a handful of small donations linking back to the same GoFundMe. And worst of all, one of the commenters had shared the exact address of the guest house, complete with a screenshot from Google Maps and a caption, "If anyone wants to bring them a care package." I felt my stomach turn. They had weaponized public sympathy to the point of doxing themselves on my property. My lawyer called me that night without me even prompting. "We need to act," she said. "This is no longer just about eviction. They've made it public. And if anything happens to your home, your safety, your business, it's traceable to this campaign. Do I have grounds to shut it down?" I asked. "Absolutely. False statements, doxing, harassment. It's a liability nightmare for the platform. But more importantly, we can now file for a restraining order and cease and desist." My voice felt hollow when I asked, "Can we win this?" She didn't hesitate. "Jason, you've already won. We're just tying the bow." So we got to work. By Monday, the legal draft was prepared. By Tuesday, we had screenshots, witness statements, and all supporting evidence compiled. By Wednesday, the GoFundMe campaign was suspended, pending investigation. And by Friday, my lawyer had filed a formal civil complaint. Quiet, professional, devastating. But the real move? That came the following Monday, when I sat across from a local journalist I'd once helped with a cybersecurity breach in her nonprofit's network. She owed me a favor, and now I was cashing it in. "Off the record," I said, sliding the folder across the cafe table, "but very, very real." She flipped through the pages. Her expression shifted from neutral to sharp in under 2 minutes. Holy, she caught herself. "This is wild. Use it or don't," I said. "But if you're looking for a story about financial abuse inside families, this is your headline." She leaned forward. "This is going to make waves." I smiled for the first time that week. Let it, because now, the story was no longer theirs to tell. It was mine, and I was just getting started. They never saw it coming. Even though I gave them every chance to change course, every silent warning, every inch of rope to pull themselves back, they only ever used it to tie tighter knots. They thought I wouldn't cut them loose. They thought I couldn't. They were wrong. The morning the process server knocked on their door, I was sitting at my desk, coffee in hand, watching my inbox refresh every 10 seconds. It wasn't just the eviction notice anymore. It was the full weight of every legal tool we'd quietly assembled in the past 6 weeks. A cease and desist for Ashley, for defamation and unauthorized public fundraising. A restraining order, preemptively filed to prevent harassment, defamation, or retaliation, complete with a binder of evidence that would have made a DA grin. And most critically, A civil complaint attached to a fraudulent deed nullification. That one hit hardest, because it meant not just eviction, not just shutting down their smear campaign. It meant the court would officially recognize Ryan's intent to steal the house and remove any future claim to it permanently. I had it couriered, hand-delivered, signed for. No contact, no drama, just business. That same afternoon, I sent an email to the city utility offices. Scheduled full-service disconnection for the guest house in 31 days, exactly 1 day after the legal grace period ended. Gas, water, electricity. And with that, the countdown began. I didn't hear from them for 3 days. Then, like clockwork, my mom called. Not to apologize. Not to ask for the truth. To beg. Jason, honey, this is too far. They're scared. Emma's confused. You can't just throw them out like this. It's not you. No, I said calmly. It's not who I was. But it's who I need to be. She cried. Said I was breaking the family. Said I was becoming someone hard. I let her say all of it. Then I told her about the fake deed. About the forged lease. About the GoFundMe campaign. About the social media posts that exposed the address and put my safety at risk. And when I was done, I said this. Mom, if I had done any of those things to Ryan, what would you be telling him right now? There was a long pause. Then she hung up. I expected Ryan to come storming in next. Maybe with some long-winded excuse, a guilt trip about Emma, a story about how it was all Ashley's idea. But he didn't. Instead, it was Ashley who showed up. At my office. Unannounced. She walked right into the reception area, probably still used to how I ran things years ago, before the upgrade, only to find a professional, very no-nonsense receptionist named Tasha who didn't even blink when Ashley raised her voice. I need to speak to Jason Clark, she said. Tasha didn't flinch. Do you have an appointment? I'm his sister-in-law. Tasha didn't look impressed. Unfortunately, Mr. Clark doesn't accept walk-ins, especially from individuals involved in ongoing legal disputes. Ashley turned red. I mean visibly, cartoonishly red. I'm not leaving until I talk to him. So Tasha picked up the phone, dialed my extension. Mr. Clark? A woman claiming to be your sister-in-law is in the lobby. She's raising her voice. I could hear her from my end, fuming. I spoke clearly. Call security. Tell them to escort her out. Ashley's voice dropped suddenly. Wait. Jason. Click. 5 minutes later, I got a text. From an unknown number. You've made your point. You win. But you're killing your niece's spirit in the process. Hope it's worth it. I read it once, deleted it, and kept working. Meanwhile, the article dropped. 3 days after Ashley's office visit, the local paper published a long-form piece titled, The Price of Family, When Help Turns into Harm. It never mentioned my name, or Ryan's, or Ashley's. Not directly, but the quotes were unmistakable. A man in his 30s, financially independent, manipulated by a younger sibling into unspoken agreements that escalated into forged documents, public smear campaigns, and legal drama. There were pull quotes. There were legal experts weighing in. And there was a quiet fury in the writing that only came from someone who had been there, or believed the person who had. The article ended with a line that still sticks with me. Sometimes the hardest part of setting boundaries is knowing that the people who made them necessary will never understand why they were needed in the first place. It went semi-viral in the city. 3 local radio stations referenced it. One of my clients sent me a screenshot with the caption, "This hits. Glad you're not letting anyone walk on you." They had no idea how literal that was. Back at the guest house, things were unraveling. Ashley had taken down the GoFundMe after GoFundMe suspended the campaign, citing unverified claims and user-reported issues. Ryan lost his temper, publicly, for the first time in years. A neighbor, Mrs. Dillon, who'd lived 2 doors down from Maryland for over a decade, called me one morning. Jason, I hate to get involved, but your brother was screaming on the porch this morning. Something about betrayal and lawsuits. Emma was crying. I thanked her for telling me. Then, against my better judgment, I drove by that afternoon. Stayed in the car. Watched from a distance. The house looked tired. Weeds had grown taller in the front yard. A cracked window had been duct-taped instead of fixed. And Emma? She was sitting on the porch swing. Alone. I didn't go up to her. I couldn't. But I made a call. To her school. To her guidance counselor. I didn't need to know what was happening inside the house. I just needed to make sure someone was paying attention. Because even in the middle of all this, she wasn't my enemy. She was a casualty. and I wasn't going to let her become another lesson ignored. The final blow came exactly 1 week before the move-out deadline. Ryan emailed me. Formal. Short. Jason, we'll be out by the 30th. Don't bother sending more threats. We get it. For what it's worth, I hope you can sleep at night. Ryan. I read it 3 times. Not because it hurt. Because it didn't. It felt empty. Like he'd poured everything into one last tantrum, and now he had nothing left. And me? I was already free. When the 30th came, I didn't go to the house. I sent my lawyer, and a locksmith, and a cleanup crew. Ashley left behind broken blinds, a cracked bathroom mirror, and a sticky note on the fridge that read, "Good luck living in this dump." But they were gone. Gone. No more late-night texts. No more fake emergencies. No more guilt. And when I walked into that house, my house, 2 days later, it was like walking into a different life. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors. The walls were quiet. And for the first time in years, I stood in a space that felt completely mine. I sat down on the old couch Marilyn left behind, pulled out my phone, and took one deep breath. Not a victory breath. Not a gotcha moment. Just peace. And that was the real revenge. Because they wanted me to stay angry. To stay reactive. To keep fighting. But I didn't. I just won. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It came slowly, like a ripple spreading from a stone dropped in deep water, subtle at first, then undeniable. A week after they moved out, I started getting the check-ins. Not from Ryan or Ashley, but from their friends. People I hadn't heard from in years. Old high school classmates. A cousin I hadn't spoken to since college. Even a guy who used to mow Marilyn's lawn who randomly sent me a Facebook message. "Hey man, I heard what's going on. Just wanted to say, you're doing what you have to do." Some people forget help isn't owed. That's when I knew the article had done more than just stir up local sympathy. It had shifted the narrative. Ashley and Ryan couldn't control the story anymore. Not after screenshots of the forged lease started making rounds in comment sections. Not after someone on Reddit linked the GoFundMe page to an article about fake family fundraising scams. Not after one of Ashley's coworkers posted a now-deleted tweet. Imagine accusing your brother-in-law of stealing from a child, while you're embezzling sympathy donations for a house you trashed. Bold strategy. I didn't engage. Didn't post a thing. Didn't feed the fire. I just watched. Waited. And one by one, the consequences rolled in. Ashley lost her job first. Apparently, someone forwarded the article and screenshots of her GoFundMe to her employer. HR launched an investigation. Within 72 hours, she was let go due to conduct unbecoming of a company representative. She tried to spin it on Facebook, of course. Wrote a long, self-pitying post about corporate greed and how speaking up cost her everything. It got 2 likes and a comment from some distant aunt who replied with a single praying hands emoji. A week later, she deleted her profile entirely. Ryan, meanwhile, didn't go down in one dramatic collapse. His fall was slower. Sadder. His job at the accounting firm had always been precarious. He was good enough to stay under the radar, but not good enough to promote. When the article dropped and word spread, he got called in just for a chat. From what I heard, they didn't fire him, but they did cut his hours. He tried applying for new jobs, but every time he put Clark House LLC on a rental application, my company name, tied to the trust property, it triggered questions. Questions he couldn't answer. Questions that ended applications before they started. Last I heard, they were living in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. No backyard. No guest house. No porch swing. Just 4 walls and a lease they actually had to pay for. Ryan emailed me once more. This time, it wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was hollow. "Jason, it's done. You win. I still think you overreacted. But I guess you were always good at walking away when things got uncomfortable. I hope you enjoy your silence." I didn't reply, because I wasn't enjoying the silence. I was living in it. My parents stayed quiet for a long time. Weeks passed without a word. Then, on a Sunday morning, I got a knock on my door. It was my dad. He looked older, smaller somehow, like the weight of it all had finally sunk in. He didn't ask to come in, just stood there on the porch and said, "I read the article." I nodded. He stared at the ground. I didn't know about the deed, or the forged lease. "I believe you," I said, "but I should have. I should have asked. I should have listened when you said something felt off. He paused, swallowed hard. I kept hoping it was a phase, that Ryan would grow up, that you two would figure it out. But I think I missed how far gone it really was. He looked up at me then. I'm sorry, son. It was the first real apology I'd gotten from either of them in years. Not a deflection, not an excuse, just honest. And it didn't fix everything, but it helped. I nodded slowly. I know. He left without asking for anything. That was the difference. 2 months passed. I repainted the guest house, replaced the broken window, tore out the weed-choked lawn, and had new grass laid. I even added solar panels, something Marilyn had always talked about but never gotten around to doing. Then, I turned it into something new. Not a rental, not a family crash pad. A program. 1 unit, fully refurbished, dedicated to temporary housing for displaced youth who'd aged out of foster care. I partnered with a nonprofit in the city, offered it rent-free for 5-year cycles. 1 young adult at a time. A real second chance. The first resident was a 19-year-old named Mateo. Quiet, respectful, worked nights at a bakery, saved every dime. The first night he moved in, he left a note on the kitchen counter. I've never had a place to myself before. Thank you for trusting me. I won't waste it. That night, I cried for the first time since all of it began. Not for Ryan, not for Ashley, for Marilyn. Because I knew, wherever she was, she'd be proud. As for Emma, I didn't see her again for a long time. And that was intentional. I needed distance. She needed peace. But one day, about 6 months after everything settled, I got a letter. Handwritten, neatly folded. No return address. Just, Dear Uncle Jason, I miss you. I don't understand everything that happened, but I know things got bad between Mom and Dad and you. I'm okay, but I wanted to say thank you for always being nice to me. I remember the dinosaur pancakes and how you came to my school that time when no one else could. I still have the blue bracelet you got me at the fair. It's in my drawer. I don't wear it much, but I look at it when I'm sad. I hope we can talk again someday. Love, Emma. I read it 5 times. Then I put it in a frame. Not because I needed to be reminded of what I lost, but because I needed to remember why I did it. Emma wasn't my responsibility, but I'd still protected her. By walking away from the people who kept using her as a shield. People always say revenge is loud, explosive, violent. But that's not true. Sometimes revenge is quiet, calm, legal, measured. Sometimes it looks like repainting a porch your brother never paid for. Sometimes it sounds like your mother sitting silently through dinner, unsure of how to bring up the things she swore she'd never forgive you for. Sometimes it feels like a house that's finally empty and finally free. And sometimes it's a little girl's letter on your desk, thanking you for doing the right thing, even when everyone else thought it was wrong. That's the thing they never tell you about revenge. You don't get peace by hurting the people who hurt you. You get peace by removing them from the parts of your life that matter. And then, you build something better. Brick by quiet, glorious brick.